Why are we so bad at estimating tasks? We're going to get into the ADHD angle in a little bit, but generally speaking, whether you have ADHD or not, many of us struggle with time estimations because of certain cognitive biases. They're kind of like psychological phenomenons that influence the way we think about or perceive our world. And they're not necessarily true. In fact, they're usually not. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble. There is a cognitive bias called the optimism bias, which means that sometimes our brains have a tendency to naturally go to the best case scenario. So it sounds like this is a nice way to view the world, right? Like, isn't it good to be optimistic, rose-colored glasses? Yes, but not when it contradicts reality and not when it contradicts the very real math that's involved with estimating time. So let's take that grocery store example that I gave at the top of this episode, and let's just say that I know that going to Whole Foods takes 90 minutes. And the math says that, and the reality says that, and 20 years of historical data tells me it takes 90 minutes. But one day, I need groceries, and I look at the clock, and I realize that I have 70 minutes. Falling for the optimism bias means that I somehow convince myself that this time I can do my grocery shopping in 70 minutes, even though I know it always takes 90. I start thinking, well, if I get a really good parking spot, and if I skip these few aisles, and maybe it's not that busy that day, and if I go really fast, and traffic's really light, and if I don't take forever picking out a papaya like I always do, then yeah, I can do it in 70 minutes. All right, that is a lot of mental gymnastics and best case scenario thinking to convince myself that I can do a 90-minute task in 70 minutes, even though I have no data to prove that I can do so. That is the optimism bias. The stories we tell ourselves. Like, yeah, I can sit down and do that in half an hour. Yeah, I can read that textbook chapter in 20 minutes. Yeah, I can bang out that presentation in an hour, even though it usually takes 7. Yeah, I can do this big thing in a small amount of time, even though I never have. Right? So sometimes that's what we're up against when we try to estimate tasks, the optimism bias.